This is the 20th season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, Aftco, Pro Guide Batteries, X-Zone Lures, Shoreline Boat and RV Repair, Spro, Gamakatsu, Big Bite Baits, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning, and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. I might be a little bit fuzzy. The gremlins in the machine are real. The internet does not like sub-zero actual temperatures here in Oklahoma. So I've had multiple people out to the house, multiple trucks on multiple cables leading into the studio. So I think we've got it going where we got a full week of shows lined up, a show that I'm very excited to get to today. I really don't know much about Brian Evans. He took over Basstrix. We all know what Basstrix is in 2021. He's been running it ever since. But to me, Basstrix goes back to those mid 2000s, Jay Yellis, Skeet Reese, Steve Kennedy, that type of thing. And then it's been kind of a little bit of a mysterious company. So I know they made a comeback. So I was talking with my buddy Todd Klein, rest in peace, Dolphin. Sorry to that didn't go very well. But he was like, hey, I know the contact here. Ended up getting hooked up with Brian. So we're going to get him on here in a couple of seconds. Over the weekend, big news did go down on the Bass Pro Tour. Dakota Ebear drops out of the BPT and makes the move to the Opens, which opens up a spot for Jacopo Galeli. I might not have said that right. To move into the BPT. But here's the wild thing. So Ebear has between 15 events on the BPT and the MLF Pro circuit, he has 10 single-digit finishes and over $750,000 in earnings. I mean, the dude has literally been one of the top 5 hottest anglers in the world over the past 2 years. And then seemingly out of nowhere makes the move to bass. Now, he did post something on his Instagram, on his social media, talking about he doesn't want things to get twisted or taken out of context. And it was just a move. One of the things that I did find that was interesting was he did mention that him and Tristan McCormick, who has been on BTL a number of times in the past, they're going to do a Kings of Bass episodes with those two anglers, kind of their quest to make the Bassmaster Elite Series. Obviously, Tristan McCormick fished the MLF Pro Circuit or Invitationals last year, won the Open the previous year to close things out on Lake Hartwell. So little bit of interesting news. Not sure what to take on that. I'm sure we will hear from Dakota Ebear in the future. Obviously, with 750 podcasts out there, I'm sure he'll end up on one of them. So, all right, let's get to today's guest and then get into it. Not so much industry. I want to know lure history, everything that's going on, and then what they have in the plans in the future, because I'm seeing a bunch more of this stuff pop up recently over the last couple of years, and that would be Brian Evans, who apparently is really good at fishing if you look at the background right there. Brian, thanks for jumping on BTL. Thank you. Like I said, a little bit of a logistical nightmare over the last couple of days, especially you're also on the West Coast, 2-hour time frame. But hey, we're here. We're live. Thanks for jumping on BTL.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's I'm out here in California, and it's I think it was like 65 yesterday at the beach. So I feel bad for you.
Yeah, no, I think it got up to eight, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I've got, my boat's in the garage, which is heated. So I've got like 4 days to get ready for Florida. And I just look at it out there and I'm like, I do not have a burning desire to get out there, but I'll have to bundle up.
Yeah, man.
Are those all plaques and trophies that you have won?
Yes, sir. Most of them are team and regional events here in Southern California and Central California.
Wow, that's quite the impressive back. Like that's a top 10 BTL backdrop. Like that rivals like okay, there's no like Bassmaster Classic or Forest Wood Cup trophies up there, but that rivals like the KVD, the Jacob Wheeler, the Jordan. Like the backdrop is very impressive. Well done.
Well, thank you. We put a little time and effort into it. It was kind of about time to do a media room and have the opportunity to do some product showcase. And when we have pros in town, they can talk about the product and kind of just do a media room. So we made it cool. Well, man,
you look way younger than me. And
how old are you?
I turned 40 this year, man.
Okay, I got a couple years younger. I just
that's
just
what I said.
35.
I was reading an article on Bassmaster about Chad Pipkins, who had some stuff like some elbow surgery or something, and it was like the 40-year-old pro, and I was like, my God, I just still think of Chad Pipkins to be as like young guys, but we've been around for a while, I guess. So how the heck did you become the president, owner, CEO, head guy at Basstrix? Because I don't know what your knowledge of the history of Basstrix is, but I kind of want to go from 95 when this thing started up until 2023, because this is like one of those kind of unicorn companies that has always intrigued me. And I think a lot of us have like that, like, there's lures where the first time you threw it or something, like you remember where you were. That's 100% how it is. And I think there's a lot of guys that are like that with Basstrix. So just right off the hopper, kind of walk me through your journey to the head honcho at Basstrix.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy, little bit of a long story, but you mentioned 1995. That's when the company started. So next year will be like 30 years. So I was, 5 years old or something like that when it started. So I don't know how much of the real old history I can provide, but obviously I've heard quite a few stories from the past owner. But yeah, as I said, I kind of grew up fishing team tournaments and did some pro-am stuff here on the West Coast. And when I was doing that, I knew I needed a way to fund that because it's very expensive, as you know. So I started doing all of my training to be a firefighter. Spent like 6 years doing that and did all of my schooling, fire academy, EMT school, and just always, kind of kept busy with that while I was fishing. And I got hired with a department and did that for a while, moved to a different department. And that was 2019, 2020, somewhere in there. And ended up getting really sick during my academy. And what I thought at the time was like the flu ended up being something a little bit worse. And I ended up having lung damage and kind of got sent home before what we knew, what the COVID word was. And yeah, long story short, I was sitting at home and the shutdown happened and all of the hiring was froze, and I was kind of in the middle of stuff. And during that whole, shutdown and pandemic time, I kind of saw a part of that industry that didn't really sit right with me. Just how first responders were treated during that, and forced vaccinations and this and that, and politics, and just kind of a lot of crazy stuff happened. So my passion's in fishing, and I wanted to be in the fishing industry in some way, shape, or form. And I have my tournament partner, Matt Newman of iRod, was actually in our local tackle store.
No, that's your tournament partner. Matt Newman's your tournament.
That's my team partner.
So you're in the right circles.
yeah. So he was in our local tackle store, and Bruce, the previous owner of Basstrix, actually called that store when he was sitting there and was like, hey, this is going to be our last order. We're kind of phasing things out. We're gonna sell the company, things like that. And Matt overheard that conversation and was like, I have the guy. I have the perfect guy for that spot. Everything kind of just lined up timing wise. And I got in touch with Bruce from there. And we talked for a good, I don't know, maybe 5 months about, transitional ownership and stuff like that, where my head was, where I wanted to take the company, kind of like my why behind it. So at that time, my mom had just passed away. And I kind of just came to like a crossroads of things where I literally took, all of my life savings, a little bit of life insurance money that I had at the time from my mom passing away, and gave it, all into this direction. So that's how I acquired the company. And it's after that, it was the COVID pandemic, fishing tackle craziness. So I stepped right into it.
Did you have any? So it doesn't sound like you had any previous, like outside of fishing, like industry insider. You hadn't been involved in any other tackle companies. Nothing.
No, just working like trade shows for IROD at the time, and kind of like that was really it. Just seeing that and how Matt started that company and grew the company and took it from there. That was really it. Fishing the West Coast is pretty small, so I through fishing some pro-ams and team circuits and stuff like that, I made a lot of contacts. But no, it was all in.
So you've had your last 4 years have been just wild.
Completely wild, like life changing. I didn't know, I knew a little bit about business. My family has a family owned business, but for what I stepped into, at the speed it was going in fishing tackle sales, like, no, I had to learn everything on the fly, like everything.
That's a wild story. So would you say now, January 16th, 2024 is kind of the most settled you have been since you took over this whole thing? I mean, like I said, we're through the pandemic. You look healthy now. You've had a couple years under your belt as the owner of Basstrix, and it seems, just from the outside looking in, I've talked to you twice in my entire life, but it seems from the outside looking in that Basstrix is stable and is making moves and is expanding product line, and things are on an upward climb in a tackle industry that's very volatile right now, especially with new techniques coming in, purchasing habits, economy. It seems like Basstrix is definitely on an upward trend.
Yeah, it's like I said, all or nothing. If I'm gonna do something, I feel like I'm really gonna put my full effort into it and doing it right. And yeah, it's settled down a little bit. And when I first came in, it was craziness, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is normal. And then I learned to kind of dive through the slow periods, and yeah, it's a interesting time, I think, in the industry, and jumping in full speed. So yeah, I wouldn't say completely stable. Every day is a learning lesson.
It's like my internet connection today.
Yeah, it's always a challenge or an emergency. When I walk in, it seems like a piece of equipment broke, or a new law goes into effect, or just all that stuff. Like I said, I had to learn on the fly. So everything from payroll to taxes to billing and marketing, and yeah, it's been fun, man.
Oh yeah, you're trying to run a company out of California too, aren't you?
It's not the easiest thing, but we're getting there.
All right. You mentioned Bruce Porter. He founded Basstrix in 1995. And before you bought this, did you have to do like a deep dive, a history lesson? I think I remember I met him, I think, at a Forest Wood Cup. It would have had to have been him in like 2007, 2008. And it was one of those where it was like, oh my God, they're on the shelves. Like, there they are. And I think it was like just him that he's like, yeah, I pour all these. And I was talking, but how much of the history of the company do you know from like 95 up until now?
Well, like I said, I was pretty young at that time, but I think I know quite a bit of the history as far as the stories I've heard from him and from the pros that have reached out to me that had won major events on it and stuff like that, and kind of heard their stories. But when I was like first started fishing, team tournaments, that would have been 06, I want to say.
Yep.
That was during one of the peaks of it. So when I came into that world, it was I was hearing about it all over the place, and of course, because it's a West Coast brand and a California brand, it was a craze here too, and it was really hard to get them here as well. But I remember my first kind of history with it was where a lot of West Coast swim bait guys started. For the YouTube watchers, I don't know if you can see this. This is the original garage pour double hook top hook bait. So he did like a 6, 8, and 10 inch. Yeah, that's still in the package. You can see it's all really gross.
Okay,
So,
yeah. So that's like real original stuff. So like you get out
real original.
Midwest outside of California, like I didn't even know that existed. I thought it was always
Yeah.
just the paddle tail.
No. It started off with finesse baits and tubes. And then when the swim bait craze hit here in Southern California, he was one of the first ones to do that. And that is the bait that Byron Velvick won on in 2000 up at Clear Lake, where he created Byron's Corner, and it was a bass invitational, I believe.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's really what started it, and I would say put it on the map, like as far as like a national knowledge of the product. And in all honesty, half of them swam right. Byron calls it the halibut because it would kind of come in flat a lot of the time. Back in '95, weighting something was, I think, a little bit more challenging. It was like it seemed to be just like a standard internal head, which is why it's all white and gross. The lead over the years, but that's really what started it. If you could get one that swam correctly, it didn't make it very far.
So then I guess it really made its deal with the 5 and 6 inch, the hollow body paddle tail. That's what I think 99% of bass anglers, well, outside of California, associate Basstrix with and have.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And that was like, I want to say somewhere, 05, 06, 07, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I would agree. I was doing a little research, and the first time I heard about it was Jay Yellis, who refused to say that bait that he was throwing the entire year when he went. I don't either won or got second on the FLW tour. And the earliest I found is like a 2007 article. Texas veteran Jay Ellis relied on a 6-inch Basstrix swim bait throughout the tournament. He didn't get a lot of bites, but his average, and that was like one of the first times that he had actually said that bait name. Otherwise, he was keeping it under. He goes, I don't think the fish have seen this particular bait before, and that's also a big factor. And then obviously what Kennedy did with the was it a baby bass colored Basstrix on Clear Lake? When he set the record, he threw the Huddleston and trout because he didn't know that there weren't trout in Clear Lake. And then he also threw a football jig, but then he also threw the Basstrix.
Yeah, that was 07, and I believe it was the baby bass color and IU. And then there was another top 10 in that event that was on the hollow body as well.
So the beauty of the internet is here's an article from November 2007, written by the one and only Hall of Famer Louis Stout. Actually, at this point, he was going by Lewis, apparently. I don't know if you know Louis Stout for bass.
No.
There's Kennedy, a very blurry Kennedy in the Konami, and this is an awesome article. Hot trends, the Basstrix paddle tail tube, which is what they were calling it at the time. I do remember it was a big thing that it was a tube because of how it was poured. And we'll get into all that later. A slender, soft plastic swim bait with a vibrating tail has become the hottest lure this season on the tournament trail nationwide. He said, I had a hunch that bait was going to be this year's chatterbait, and I was right, said Steve Kennedy, referring to 2006. I didn't want to be caught where I couldn't get any more of them. And then it goes in, it describes it. It talks about all the places he's caught them on. Fish swim up behind it and inhale it. Like, this is almost, some of the lines in here are like made for TV lure lines, but it's actually like Steve Kennedy saying it.
Yeah.
But then it talks about the limited production. This is really interesting in here. Basstrix owner Bruce Porter, California, says each lure requires at least 15 minutes to build and finish. Hence, he's behind on production with no end in sight. All the baits are built and painted by hand, so it takes time. We're very particular how each one is finished. He is producing about 260 packages a day and working on a 90-day back order. That was insane back then.
Yeah, I could definitely see. That during a craze. I mean, it's even hard to kind of keep up with production right now. Like you said, everything's made by hand. It's made in house, and it is, like you said, hand painted. They're very tedious. it's kind of a unique deal. Like I don't think there's a lot of other soft plastics that get that much attention to detail. There's glide baits that are made in house and take a really long time to make, and they're very tedious, and they sell for $100. But he kind of brought that world into soft plastics.
I remember the first time I got my hands on them was at that cup, and I got 6 packs of the baby bass. And then I graduated college and we went down to Toledo Bend. And I told my buddy Darren, I said, dude, and the only hook that they had, the weighted hook, was the Falcon weighted hook. So you'd had to buy the 6/0 Falcon. It fit in the 6-inch paddle tail. And like 3 casts in, I had like a giant follow it. That was the first, back in 2008, you weren't used to seeing fish follow. The glide baits weren't really a thing yet. And I said, dude, there's a freaking giant that followed that back in. And he's like, no, dude, that was a carp. And I was like, no, that was a bass. So the next cast, another one followed it, and he looked down and he goes, oh my God, that was a bass. And we ended up going through all 6 of those. And by the end, there was no way to Texas rig them. So we were nose hooking them on EWG hooks with lead wrapped around it because they were so beat up, and we couldn't glue them back together anymore. And they were just, they were toast. So
did they still get bit on the nose hook?
Yeah, I mean, we caught them. There was like a group of like 15 of us from the Assumption Bass Club that went down there, and we absolutely throttled everybody. Like we were averaging.
Awesome.
Look, I've got a picture on my back screen right there. There's a picture of that day of us holding a 26-pound limit that all came on that bass.
Dude, that's so cool. When something like that happens, it's really fun. As we know as fishermen, like, when you get that bait that just does something different, and the fish haven't seen it, they're not used to it, and they react to it like that. It's really, really cool.
So did you feel like a little bit of stress or obligation or anxiety in taking over a brand that so many people knew about and associated with, and then trying to, make it profitable, bring it up? Because that had to have, I mean, especially being out on the West Coast with so many eyeballs on you, that had to be a little bit of stress, because we've all seen brands that get taken over, then they either go in the dumper or they get bought out or something happens. So what was your anxiety level as far as keeping it kind of some OG remnants to it, but also bringing it into the 22nd century?
Yeah. I think my anxiety and stress level would be at an all-time high. It still is. It's a lot of it was a lot of pressure. There was to be able to carry a brand name into the future, and like you said, there's been a lot of other companies that have tried, and it seems like when they get a second owner, it just, things change, and it's not the same. So yeah, stress level's high. But kind of like I said, my reason behind it is personal, and it's just, I have a lot of passion for it. So it's fun. I want to honor everything that Bruce did. I didn't start the company. I didn't create the process in which they were made, which I think is something extremely unique, proprietary. We keep it quiet. As you know, there's been a lot of kind of knockoffs on it that have just ended up kind of going away for certain reasons. So yeah, it's really important to me to keep that name and to keep the values behind the company, and also, open up a little bit to take it to where I want it. I have some more plans for things, but yeah, high stress.
Is that a deal where like Bruce was like, all right, come in here, I'm going to show you how all this stuff is done, we're going to do the deal, like you're one of 3 people on earth who knows how these suckers are made now?
Yeah, he was in talks with, quite a few people for purchasing the company. There was other brands involved. There was a corporation involved. There was an Elite Series angler involved, MLF angler involved. So after I got to know him and just like talking to him, he said it took 4 or 5 months of, I feel like him just kind of sussing me out a little bit. I think that's what kind of convinced him to go with me at those qualified people, is keeping some core values behind it.
If you've watched the Chatterbait documentary, there's all sorts of stuff about copyrights and trade patents and all that. And I know a little bit behind the scenes with the Basstrix, but there's like time deals where you can like have the early patent, but then if you don't re-up it, then like other people, then it's like fair. There's like all sorts of stuff behind the scenes when it comes to this stuff that you don't realize. And it all takes a ton of money to protect it, to re-up it, to make sure your patent isn't expiring. And it has been a time period where it's like, oh, that looks really similar to a Basstrix. And then you hold it and you're like, well, wait, that is a Basstrix mold, but it's not a Basstrix. So there's been a lot of kind of ebbs and flows in that kind of hollow bodied paddle tail world. Is that a fair way to say it without getting into it?
Yeah, it is fair. You have to have a lot of backing financially to protect things. You have to have a lot of knowledge, a lot of time to dedicate into that. And I think things have changed, it seems like, in the last 10 years with that. As far as like, I don't think they're as strict. I see so many companies. It's really hard to patent stuff in fishing. In manufacturing, it's a little bit different, but as far as like fishing lures go, it's really hard to get the rights to that or patent it or copyright it or whatever you want to do. It's a challenge, and I think we're seeing that a lot. You know, there's one product comes out and the next week another brand has the same, like you're saying, the same looking thing. You're like, well, okay, the tail's 5% different, you know, so they obviously figured out something. And it's just, it's kind of sad, but it's kind of become industry normal for just, you know, everything to kind of.
Take a couple questions. I want to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we'll dive into what you have going on now, what the future looks like. I know you're working with Matty Wong, with some other professional anglers, but probably the most asked question about the Basstrix is, what the hell makes those older ones slimy? Like, I've got some that are slimy, some that are not. Rich is asking about it on here. A bunch of guys are like, what's up with the slime?
Yeah, so that's kind of a crazy thing. And just in manufacturing, things can happen. But for anybody that doesn't know about manufacturing fishing lures, plastisol sucks. It's things can change in it that are very unexpected. And with that situation, from my understanding, I guess when Hurricane Katrina hit, there was a disruption in the supply chain of certain oils and chemicals that went into the plastic. And without anybody's knowledge, things were cut and kind of substituted in to, you know, keep the plastic industry going. And it's something that, you know, is a chemical reaction. It's inside the product. And as a brand owner and a manufacturer, you don't know about it right away. You know, you build the baits, you let them cure, you package them, they're on the shelves for a few weeks before they go to your dealers. And even there, they can be in good condition for like 6 months to a year or something like that. And then there's some kind of a breakdown that starts happening. And at that point, you know, the chemical reaction will start like leaching out oil and residue, and, you know, they're sticky, and then the plastic gets hard. So I feel bad for when that happened, because that was when I stepped in, like the first thing I did. I'm like, what happened here? How can I fix it? And I just went to a different distributor of plastisol and kind of explained, like, this can't happen. Have you guys ever had this happen before? So that, you know, it sucks. It's part of manufacturing. There were, during that time period, like that same couple of years, I know there were some other companies that were using that same manufacturer that had the same issues. I don't know if you ever got
that kind of yellowish.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've got some packs where you have like the bin and there's like 2 packs that are like leaching out, and you're like, what is this stuff? It's the same stuff that probably came from the same class that was used by Basstrix.
Yeah, RoboWorm was one of them. They had issues where like the worm would turn clear. It would like eat their dye and their paint away. You'd have a crystal clear worm, and then it would be oily. And then there was a couple other brands, some here in California and some back east, that were all using that same one and had those issues. It's kind of just part of it, but I still have like 20, 30 packs from that time, you know, period in my tackle garage, where it's just like, can't throw them away because they're historic, but they're nasty. I don't want to touch them.
I've gone through and I like washed each one off and then individually like wrapped each bait like in a paper towel, like a mummy.
Yeah, I've done the same thing. I've soaked them in 409, washed them with water, rinsed them out. Like, you know, if I had a tournament, you know, before I owned the company, if I had a tournament where I had to go into that stash to salvage them and get them out. There's ways to kind of fix them up,
but you said that was one of the first things you did when you took it over was to figure out what that was and then to change it so that's no longer an issue with Basstrix.
Yeah, we have not seen it since. It is plastic. Like I said, it's a pain in the ass, and anything can happen. But I went to a different brand immediately, and like so that was like one of my most important things was quality control. I think a combination of that and being a handmade company with production limitability was when those crazes hit, whether it was Byron or Skeet or whenever there was like a national tournament won on it would just go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And quality control is like my my main thing. I have a employee that's their number one job, and if something gets made too soft or too stiff, we end up throwing a lot of them away or using them for the saltwater out here.
So how many people do you have working for you now at the Basstrix facility?
I have 4 manufacturers and 1 person who does quality control and packaging, and then I have a rep as well.
So it's not huge.
No, it's not huge. That's part of one of those California things that we talked about. It's it kind of puts you in a place of, I think when Bruce was really cranking stuff out, they had 12 or 13 manufacturers.
Wow.
And yeah, it was just a different time. Like now doing that in California with workers' comp and wages and stuff like that, it's very hard to do that. I'm sure we'll end up there eventually, but it's I'm trying to do as much as I can with what I have right now. Yeah, it's just kind of a different time then. So.
And then the other thing that was interesting was the quality control. So Kennedy would talk about, there's an article, and this was from 2017, written by Pete Robbins, friend of BTL. He's been on the show a bunch of times. I'll show this one, and that was titled "What Happened to Basstrix in 2017," and it goes through, the 7-inch deal, the when Remitz and Skeet Reese were throwing it, and then there were a bunch of guys that did the 7-inch. It talks about all the others, but there's a line in here from Kennedy. Oh, here it is right here. If you've got a Basstrix that swims right, it won't last 5 minutes. I don't care what lake you're on. So that was the other thing that you've always had to fight too, is it's such a fickle bait, especially, and we're focusing on that paddle tail. Like I said, we'll get into the rest of some of the. But how do you keep it like that, but also like not be like, hey guys, like they come 3 to a pack and you might get 2 good ones, but there's just one you're gonna have to sacrifice? Because I mean, in all reality, that's just what, as hardcore tournament anglers, you've probably done the same thing. You dump them all out, you put them in, and you're like, oh yeah, that one rolls and wiggles right. That one's got the right thump. That one goes in the coal pile. So that's something you also have to deal with too as an owner now, because you want to make sure all 3 of them swim right, I would assume.
Yeah, no, I'm basically doing that full time at the shop. So.
Oh, so you're going through and culling them before they go into.
No, I have a quality control person that,
okay.
Like I said, she'll look at them and we have kind of a gauge on where they need to be softness, hardness wise. And, but yeah, it is something that I try and take personal, and I notice myself, I'll go into inventory. I'll find something that's kind of been there for a month or 2 and take a pack out. And I'm really fortunate where my shop is in Southern California. I'm like literally 5 minutes from the harbor and from the beach. So I'll run over there. I always keep a rod in my truck and go do some test swims with stuff to make sure, everything's right. But yeah, it's the way that they're manufactured. It is, little things can make a big difference, temperature in the shop. And thank goodness we are here in Southern California where it's pretty consistent. But yeah, temperature's a big one. And then, like I said, Plastisol companies seem to vary their blend. I'll order the same exact ratio and blend of everything, and one batch might be a little bit different from the next. So it's something that I'm always, trying to pay attention to the best of my ability.
And you've had to learn about all that over the last 5 years. I'm sure 5 years ago, Plastisol was not high on your priority list of things.
I had some basic knowledge in it. I've always been not a bait designer like Bruce was, but I've always been a lure nerd, bait builder, stuff like that, but just at a garage level. So luckily the little bit of knowledge I had did carry over.
All right, we're going to try to take a break. I'm not really sure what's going to happen when I try to run the commercials. But when we come back, Brian Evans, we're going to talk about what's going on now. And just full disclosure, not sponsored, nothing. Like, this is just me nerding out, having an opportunity to talk to a guy who owns a company that that I associate heavily with, kind of nostalgia and tournament fishing that's made a comeback. So it's BTL on a Tuesday. Brian Evans, what are you, owner and CEO?
Yes, sir.
Of Basstrix Lure Company. You always want to say bait, but it's Basstrix Lure Company.
Yeah.
We'll be back right after this.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Everything you need, one legendary brand. Top one, Strike King.
All right, guys, if you're a construction worker, soccer dad, soccer mom, you want to be outdoors, you've seen the Reaper. This right here is the zip-up full Reaper, but it's windproof, folks, windproof. And it actually has the mast built in. It's behind me. I mean, if you can look good, feel good, and stay warm, you better check it out. It's the zip-up Reaper. That's right, windproof.
Have you considered purchasing new electronics for your rig? The type of mounts you choose to protect your investment should be part of the decision-making process. No matter if you prefer 1, 2, or 3 graphs up front, Beatdown Outdoors has a solution for you. Adjustable, versatile, rigid, and made in the USA. What's your ultimate electronic setup? Check out the full selection of Beatdown Outdoors products by visiting beatdownoutdoors.com. All right, welcome back. BTL on a Tuesday, talking with Brian Evans from Basstrix Lure Company. Got a little bit of the history, how he got involved in owning one of the most iconic brands in the. It's. Would you still consider it a niche brand, Brian?
Yeah, I think so for the most part. It really kind of caters to tournament anglers, of course, but people that are more into like spending a couple extra dollars to get bites. Like I said, everything's hand painted and highly detailed, and we have to charge for that. But that is one of my one of the endeavors I kind of want to go on is making it a little bit more broad scale into other industries, like like crappie and trout, inshore fishing, saltwater stuff like that, and eventually be able to kind of produce some things that aren't as tournament and high end bait niche.
You're kind of in a position like the grunge bands in the 90s where they're the Northeast, because like they were very small, but then the more success they had and the bigger than ever, they're like, yeah, of course we want to grow. Of course we want to go mainstream. But then they go mainstream and then everyone's like, oh, you're a sellout. Your music's not as good as when you were playing for 30 people in that bar down there. So you're kind of in a unique position like that. So
that's a very good description of it.
Yeah. One of the cool things that I noticed, and I've had Matty Wong on a couple times. I think he's one of the best stories to come out of bass fishing over the past, what has it been, 3 or 4 years now, since he kind of came out of nowhere and won that Bass Nation Championship, jumped on the Elite Series, comeback of the year this year to for lack of a better term, to save his ass. So he gets another couple years out, but dude, one of the most positive guys. How'd you guys get hooked up with Matty Wong as kind of the flagship Elite Series pro chunking Basstrix around these days?
Yeah, it was a really, really fun part to be, in that process. Matty kind of moved into the area where I live a little bit after I took over Basstrix. And I had bumped into him at a few team tournaments and stuff like that, but didn't really know, who he was or his story. And he ended up kind of just calling me one day and was like, "Hey, man, I know who you are, and I don't live too far away. I need a place to store my boat. Do you have anywhere I can store my boat?" And that's literally how we got started. So I brought his boat over here. He was telling me about the Bass Nation and the championship and all this stuff, and I'm like, "Cool, man." He was at like a kind of a team and club level at the time. So I kind of tried to step in with where I could, with any kind of help, and just hearing his whole story of how he came here from Hawaii and kind of how he wanted to get into tournament fishing. So he brought his 1985 Ranger over to my house, and we sat in the front yard for, a couple hours, kind of getting to know each other and wrap out and stuff like that. And, dug through all my tackle in my bait barn, and, showing him lures, throwback lures and stuff. And then he went out and won that freaking championship, which was like, it was crazy. I forget how many boats were there, 150, 200 boats. There was
in the championship, there's only like 56, but he had to
go
through he had to go through like a couple thousand different levels to get to that championship.
Yeah, and doing it on the West Coast. So yeah, once he got there, that's right, that's 50 boats. It was still pretty like, I knew he could fish, but it was like a 1 in 50 odds, so it was like, good luck, man, stoked for you, go kill him. And then talking to him on the drive out there, and then, kind of hearing about his practice, and like, okay, he kind of has a shot at this. And then following through that whole tournament, and he goes out and freaking wins the thing and becomes a classic appearance and Elite Series Pro. So at that time, it was fun to be a part of that. Maddie's a good guy. He's got a crazy story, and I jumped on and said, dude, I don't know what I could do for you. I'm very early stages, but I'd like to support you and your journey in any way that I can. So having the company, that was the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty cool. I do got to say, on his part, when that whole thing went down, he walked into some pretty corporate offices when he was getting sponsorships for that initial year. And, went to the boss at those companies and was like, hey, I would love to accept the sponsorship opportunity, but is it possible, that I can still keep Basstrix as a sponsor and keep them on? So I think that kind of just speaks to the kind of person, he is, and the humble beginnings that he comes from. And it was a really cool deal.
It seems like there's a lot of loyalty between the West Coast anglers and the guys who give them their first shot. Obviously, it's legendary how long Amart stayed with RoboWorm. That was one of his first ones, and he kept that throughout the duration of his career. It seems, obviously, Matty hasn't had the career anywhere close to what Amart had, but it's kind of the same dynamic there with a small, it's like, hey, you're my ride or die for the duration of this thing.
Yeah, and it's really, really, really cool when pros of any level do that. Byron still talks about this brand all the time and mentions it in anything that he's in. And Skeet Reese, he went on the product. Same thing with him. He, kind of gives us a shout out at any time. And the West Coast is a unique thing. It's like we're in a different world over here. We have a lot less fisheries. They're a lot smaller compared to stuff Midwest and back east. And you kind of get to know everybody fairly quickly here. It is a tight group.
All right. Go over some of the baits that you guys offer that are not just paddle tail swim baits.
Not the paddle tail, yeah.
Listen, full disclosure, the biggest bass I've ever caught in my life is an 11.4, and it came on like the bluegill looking thing that's like 3 inches and has absolutely no action to it. But like one of the big time pros was like, hey, you want to get something to eat? Like, get a couple of these. So they came in like 3 in like a little bait pack. I caught an 11.4 on it. And I haven't had a pack of those I caught that fish in 2011, 2012. I haven't had a pack of them since then. I don't know if you can even get those anymore.
Yeah, that was the bluegill fry and the bait fry. That's what Aaron and Skeet killed. What was it? It was Santee Cooper, I want to say. That's where Aaron won on it. Yeah, basically just a big flat bluegill bait with a little forked tail, but really high definition for bed fishing. It seemed to really work. And we have kind of some similar concepts that we've brought into some of the future stuff. We took that little panfish body and really just swimmed it really, really far down.
Is that it right there?
That's the bait fry. The one that we put out in the last year was I don't know if the camera can pick this up. This is the Live Tricks. So that's the Live Tricks, kind of the same deal, but more of a shad pattern.
Okay.
And that's made for like Demiki rigging, and there's all kinds of stuff you can do on it. But that was something that we brought out and resized and made into kind of more of a modern niche with the whole, forward-facing sonar deal. That was huge. The Flash Tricks, I would say, is probably our number one product right now. It's a 4-inch and there's a 3-inch. It's a straight tail, slender kind of tube minnow worm.
Wait a second. This is this thing right here on the screen. No offense, is selling more than the paddle tails right now.
Right now, yes.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's just where fishing is right now. With, like I said, with forward-facing sonar and with finesse fishing kind of becoming more of a thing for everybody versus just a clear water West Coast thing. The little Flash Trick, there's so many different things you can do with it rigging wise. That's really what makes it unique, because it's the same structure as the paddle tail. It's hollow inside. So like the thing right now is the core tackle hover rig.
Yeah,
guys,
I'm good, but we got Matt Steffen on the show tomorrow, actually at noon, a special
killer
edition BTL 12 p.m. And then we had Johnny Schultz on the show last week. So you're actually, this is I did not know this. This is, you're in between, sandwiched in between the two owners of Core Tackle.
Oh, perfect. They're good guys, and we've had a lot of contact, because putting a lead head inside, that hollow bait is something we've done on the West Coast here for many, many years. It's nothing new. But the fact that they designed that head, it fits perfectly, and now it is kind of getting in the limelight. That's something that's growing really, really fast. So, and there's just a lot of cool things you can do with it. You can throw it like a tube bait. You can do the whole shake and bake thing on forward facing sonar with it.
What did you call it?
Catching shake and bake.
that terminology. That terminology hasn't made it to Oklahoma yet. Is that the what is the shake and bake?
Like how people are fishing hover rigs and ball heads and Demiki rigs, where it's like, they're shaking the rod violently like a swim jig. Yeah, that's my terminology for it.
Okay, so this is the Core Tackle head, like the original one that they're putting that. You're putting that in that right there.
Internally, and actually,
yeah,
I have one right here for the YouTube people. I don't know if you can see that very well. So that
that fits absolutely perfectly.
Yeah, it's kind of like peanut butter and jelly together. And it's something we've done, like I said, out here for a long time. We've had a whole evolution of it. Like there's tournaments that were won out here in the early 90s doing that, and there's stuff that's being won today doing that. The graph thing and live sonar has only amplified that, but there's something special about it.
Yeah.
And it also actually falls into the swim bait world. One of the things that I've been doing with it recently is, as you mentioned earlier, like followers getting behind a swim bait.
Yeah.
Out here, we get a lot of clear water. So when we throw glide baits, we get a lot of followers that are just kind of lazy, kind of behind it. And what we've learned is we can take that rig with real light line and use that as a backup bait. So we'll get followers to come out of a brush pile or something like that, and as they peel off, we can grab our forward-facing sonar, kind of follow them, and lead a cast to them with that little finesse bait. And if you can hit them right on the head, sometimes it's just it can be money.
Am I living under a rock with this Flash? Guys in the comments are like, "Come on, Panger, like you should know this stuff." Like, is that under the radar? But or is this like the Core Tackle with the 3 or 4 inch Flash Tricks is like the mid-strolling, hover-strolling deal right now?
It's becoming it, yeah. So, I said, that's our number one seller right now is that little guy, and it's cool too because it's not just a freshwater lure. A lot of the guys in the inshore fishing, surf fishing, are using it. One of the things I did when I took over the company and learned the process was I learned how the painting and the coloring was done, and was able to grab some really cool technologies from other industries and bring it in to get some really cool color shifting holographic finishes that I think that combined with the Flash Trick, it's been a goodie.
What's your favorite new color that you brought in?
Actually, the first color I designed when I took over is called Live Bait. Um, I would have to say that's usually my starting go to, and it's the color shifting color that goes gold, blue, purple, depending on how the sun hits it, and that's another thing with the hollow body baits is they have light refraction, which it's really hard to explain without sounding like a cheesy sales pitch.
Have at it.
And the only reason Bruce explained it to me, I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, obviously there's something different about this product that does something other than the swim that triggers bites. But I don't think I really understood it until I grabbed a mask and snorkel and started going underwater to do like underwater footage and viewing it. And it's just the way, because it's hollow and it'll get air trapped inside it. Just the way that sun hits it through water, it glows, like it kind of flashes, and that's why it's called the Basstrix. It looks alive. I mean, it's pretty cool. Like I said, it's hard to not sound like a sales pitch, but it's when you see it underwater, I don't know if bats can see it that good, but it's pretty cool.
All right, hollow body paddle tails. Any plans to bring back the big ones?
Yeah, there is. We're coming out with it this year. Hopefully sometime early summer. From a manufacturing standpoint, the 7-inch sucks to make, but it's so legendary that I didn't want to try, starting the whole process until I was ready to do it. And we just got some new machines and equipment that'll help us do that. But the ones that we have now that's one of my version of the 7-inch. So it's the exact same body, exact same frame. And that thing is, that thing's legendary with Skeet and Byron and all that stuff at Guntersville in 2015. It's time for it to come back.
All right. I don't know how you're going to answer this, but you're going to answer it, or you could just not answer it. If you were to take a 2007 Basstrix that is running perfect and compare it to a 2024 Basstrix, the 6-inch paddle tail, the flagship, what are going to be the differences that the keen eye will notice between an OGO, 04, 05, 06, 07 and a 2024 model? Because that's what everyone wants to know. Everyone wants to see the wiggle warts. Everyone wants to see the chug bugs. Everyone, you know what I mean? So take those two baits, because I'm sure there's guys that are going, oh, the OG is still better than these new ones. But
yeah,
what's your opinion on that?
I think the main difference would be color.
Okay.
Like I said, we were able to find a way to get color in there that it hasn't been done to my knowledge. Some really realistic finishes. As far as the swimming goes, they're very, very, very similar. And it's hard to judge because same thing as I was mentioning earlier with plastics, things can be a little bit stiffer and softer over time. So I still have a huge stash that I got of the OGs when I took over the company. And it's something that I'll always go out and compare. I'll grab one of mine, I'll grab one of them, and then kind of look at them. And I would say ours are, comparing to certain models of that era, ours are probably 15% softer.
Okay.
So they have a little bit more tail wiggle. As the balance is trying to keep the body roll, which is what makes the bait special, the head movement and the tail going all at one time. And you have to have a very specific blend of suppleness to do that. So I'd say we went a little bit softer, more tail wobble. It seems like slow rolling swim baits is something that's very prominent in the swim bait world. So to be able to do that, but also be able to fish at mid speed and burn, and not have it kick out. So,
and then if you were to pick the ideal action, we've seen it work on ledges a lot. The guys gluing them up on the 1 ounce to 3/4 ounce swim bait heads, throwing them on Pickwick, Kentucky Lake, places like that. Obviously, when it originally came out, you're using the weighted belly hook, whether it's a Gamakatsu, there's a bunch of different ones that are out there now. How was that bait intended, just the paddle tail, intended to be fished? And how does the rigging on whether it's on a jig head or a weighted hook impact that action, in your opinion?
I think you mentioned earlier the Falcon hook.
Mm-hmm.
Like at that time, that was really the what the bait was designed for, which is just a weighted belly keeled hook. That is something important to know about a hollow body bait versus something full of salt, the solid body, is that it does need to be keeled, mostly from the bottom to get it to swim correctly. But yeah, that's really the hook that it was designed for. As far as you mentioned like the TVA chain and the proper heads for it. The bait's kind of the same. It gives that same roll but down deep. So I came out with a head called the Ledge Rocker head.
Okay.
If you guys remember the old Revenge head, it was basically modeled off of that. We did a couple small changes to make it better, and build the keeper.
That head right there.
That head right there. You're familiar. So yeah, we have our version of that now. That was always kind of the head that everybody leaned to for that ledge style fishing.
Do they not make that anymore?
No. Revenge. I believe the owner passed away. So yeah, they don't make that. There's quite a few other companies that have gone with that same shape because it's legit. But yeah, I would say that there's not really any difference as far as the baits go. It's just trying to get that body roll either up shallow or down deep. The owner Flashy Swimmer is a really good rig to pair with it. And you can do a lot of changes in the movement of the bait depending on where you place that screw lock. If you go straight to the nose, it seems to kind of maybe track a little bit more true and have a little bit more tail kick, to where if you go a little bit more under the chin and get it to plane up a little bit, that's when you really seem to get that roll. So I remember seeing some of like Byron's baits, the 7-inch in 2015, and they were like way under the chin.
Mm-hmm. Any thought of bringing back some of those OG guys like a Steve Kennedy or something like that, like some of the nostalgia guys back to the Basstrix brand? And do you get hit up by a lot of Elite Series and MLF pros for sponsorship now still?
Not as much sponsorship as it is product. And that's been pretty fun for me, being a fan of the sport and a fan of the brand is being able to talk to some of those Elite Series and MLF pros and hear what they, what their thoughts on the best product was and the best colors and kind of be able to use that as knowledge to build stuff going forward. But as far as sponsorships go, not a ton, we're small to medium size right now. Mm-hmm. So Maddie's got the roster taken up, and
nice.
we got a pretty cool video to release in the next week to keep an eye out for with that. So
where's that going to be, on his social media stuff?
No, it'll be on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. Okay. Do you remember the movie Old School?
Yeah.
Okay, you'll enjoy this then.
Okay. Anything else bait wise, company wise, that we didn't cover that you wanted to make sure we got in for the listeners and viewers?
No. Like I mentioned, I'm going to start doing a little bit more saltwater and inshore stuff as well. And we have some new stuff coming that I'm in the works for. And that's really it. Just kind of be on the lookout for that. I designed a terminal head that pairs with all the baits. That'll be, I think, the next thing that'll be dropped. That'll be in the next month or so. And it's something I'm really excited about. It's a weedless rig meant to fish on the bottom, and it's very unique, and it's something. The main design behind it is to be weedless and snagless. I mean, I've tried to snag it in the nastiest riprap I can find out on the lake, and you can't get it hung up. So that's something I'm excited to go fish and produce and bring out.
I think that our OG late 90s, the Basstrix paddle type, I mean, that's the first iteration, in my opinion. Obviously, you could say, oh, well, it's the sassy shad, but you were seeing right now, I think 2024 is the year of the harness wars.
Yep.
That you've got between Six Sets and Bass Mafia and, the Megalojohn, and there's just a pile of them, but all that is just different iterations of a hollow body swim bait trying to build a better mousetrap. Isn't it all kind of along that same kind of trail, I guess?
Lost you here for a second. Can
Oh,
you hear
have
me
I
now?
got you there? Yeah, isn't
Yeah,
it
I
kind of
gotcha.
along that same? Isn't it kind of along that same kind of trail, same kind of path that all kind of started with those kind of hollow body Basstrix? I mean, that was the
Yeah,
original one, wasn't it?
yeah, that was the original hollow body. The inlines and the harness style baits, that's something, same thing we've been doing on the West Coast for a very, very long time. The Ospreys, the Ragos, the Castakes, things like that. It seems like there's a lot of wheels kind of being reinvented right now, which
Hmm.
is not a bad thing. But it's something like we're like, yeah, we fished inline baits out here forever. It seems like, yeah, like there's a lot of wheels being reinvented, and it's pretty cool to look at from a fishing standpoint.
Hmm.
I always think about this like as a tournament angler, most of the bass that we're fishing for are, for to do good in a tournament are 3 to 5 pounds. Like that's what we're targeting as tournament anglers. And you got to think those fish are, depending on where you're at in the country, 3 to 5, 6 years old. So I always try and look back at stuff that like what was popular 6, 7 years ago, like right before they're born, stuff that, maybe they haven't been hearing and seeing and feeling since they were fry to this point. And I think that's kind of where the Basstrix falls into right now and why we're seeing success with it. You'd mentioned Pickwick and TBA. There was a national tournament one on it last year. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that comes from the West Coast and swim bait wise, but it's cool to see all these harness baits actually come out. We had one in the works, and it seemed like the market kind of just got flooded with it. So it's hard to do that and bring it out right now. But we do have one in house that some of the pro staff guys are fishing and things like that.
A little bit of a tease there. Okay, I gotta ask you. You're a West Coast guy. A lot going on in the tournament scene on the West Coast as far as what has happened with the Apex series and Wild West, the addition of the BAM, the Bass Masters teaming up with One Bass, and then the standard Toyota series that are still going on out there. Did I surmise that efficiently?
Yeah, yep, for the most part. And
What's the scene like out there? Just talk about that as an angler. Is it optimistic? Are you excited about it? Is it chaos as a hardcore tournament angler on the West Coast trying to figure out what the hell's going on?
yeah, a little bit. It seems like it's really overran. There's a lot of different circuits going on. The Apex deal was crazy with anglers not getting paid, and I think there's a lot of bitterness that comes from that, obviously. Um, but yeah, it's I'm close with Billy Egan at One Bass, and it seems like a lot of people on the West have kind of looked at him as the direction to go. But as a professional angler out here, you kind of have to fish everything. We are limited, so uh, boat numbers have been, the issue out here the last couple of years, and I think that's because of some of the organizational stuff, but also just because of the financial stuff. I mean, gas is 5 something a gallon right now, and the Coaga mussel issue on the West Coast has made it a very big challenge. A lot of the lakes have very strict policies, so you're forced to fish like only one lake. You go, you get your boat inspected. They say, yeah, you don't have any Coaga mussels. Don't bring it in here for 30 days or 40 days. But at the end of that 40 days, you can come in and fish. So it's limited a lot of anglers to certain bodies of water, which has done two things. It's hurt the tournament numbers for a lot of lakes, and it's also made everybody really good at that one lake.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a different world out here, like I said, but I think everything that Billy has to offer with One Bass and Bassmaster, I think that's going to be a really good go. And then Mark Lazange over at BAM, I talked to him about his plans, Bass Angler Magazine, and it seems like that circuit's going to be really cool too. So I think we're going to see a lot of positives come from it. MLF always has its hardcore anglers showing up for sure. I think it's going to be a positive.
Who's the next great West Coast angler that's fishing tournaments right now that none of us have heard of?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like, I mean, it'd be hard not to say Kyle Grover right now. I
Just
don't
won the
know.
U.S. Open.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, everybody's heard of him this year, and
I mean, I knew I didn't know much about him before this year, but I mean, he's got the pedigree and the resume.
yeah, there's some absolute hammers out here. Grover, Uribe. There's a big group, and even guys at some of the team levels here are just it's insane because we are isolated to this section of the country, and it's very expensive to go back east. So, like I mentioned, you get guys that are really good at some of the fisheries here. But yeah, I think it would be hard not to pick Grover right now.
You ever chase those giant spotted bass?
I did. Yeah, it used to be called. People call it Lake X. There's a lake in Northern California, and I've got to do that a few times, and it was really crazy. Like,
is that as cool as it looks, or is it one of those deals where like you look at? So like I've been there a couple of times, and I've looked at the lakes, and I'm like, this is the lake they're catching them all out of. And you're like, looking at it, and you're like, dude, it's like a freaking community pond.
See, when I went there, it wasn't. I went there. I was fishing some pro-ams up north. That's probably like 7-8 hours from me. Okay. And I'm fishing some pro-ams up north, and on the way home, my team partner Matt and a couple other boats and I went there, and we were the only boats on the lake that weekend. I think this was before Cody Meyer and Paul Bailey caught their 10, 11 pounders out of there. Yeah, so it didn't have the notoriety that it does now. So at the time, it was cool. Your average bite was a 5-pounder.
Wow.
And fishing was good.
You still like it? It seems like you still have fun, like you still have a passion for it, like you haven't bought it and it's crushed your spirit. It seems like you still love getting up every morning.
Oh, I love it. And I got a big some big shoes to fill and a big to-do list, and it's something that I work very hard on, and it's fun. Like I said, I had the chance to go a couple different directions, and I put everything into this. So we're going to make sure that it flies.
All right, Brian, we'll let you get back to that to-do list.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you having me on here. It's been fun.
I enjoyed it. Have a good morning.
Thank you so much.
All right, that is Brian Evans, who got up at like 5:30 in the morning to do that. So big shout out to Brian and Basstrix for doing that from the West Coast. I learned a lot. Hopefully everyone else learned a lot. Sometimes when you do a show that's a little bit off the beaten path from what we do at BTL, people are like, well, I didn't know or care about that. But that's something that kind of, like I said, goes back to my early tournament days in Basstrix and learning about that brand and that company. Really enjoyed that interview. So we'll take a break. When we come back, wrap things up, talk about what we have going on for the rest of the week. BTL on a Tuesday. We'll be back right after this.
Having confidence in your tackle while on the water is one of the main things to success, in my opinion. In the last couple of years with Denali, I've had just that. From anything from spinning rods, casting rods, tungsten products, even now to casting and spinning reels, I have the confidence to go out there and get the job done and know that all my equipment is going to handle it and do it just the way I want it. The thing about Denali is you've got great quality products at a great price point, so make sure you check them out.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
Shoreline Boat and RV, dock rash, storm damage, collision repair, that deep scratch or gouge from trying to access that secret creek. Shoreline Boat and RV can get your prized possession back in mint condition and looking good on the water, fast. All repairs are done in-house, so they're able to get your boat or RV back to brand new, quickly. All Shoreline's work comes with a rock-solid warranty. Find out more at ShorelineBoatandRV.com. Kansas City, Austin, and Tulsa.
I'm the kind of guy that never leaves the house without a pocket knife. And Gamakatsu's come out with the EDC series of knives. EDC stands for everyday carry, so whether you're on the water or off, you can always have it with you. The best thing about it to me is that assisted open feature. With this D2 blade, you've got it right here at your fingertips. So if you can't find your scissors, you need to cut a knot, you need to cut your braid, you've always got it. Make sure you check it out. Never leave home without your Gamakatsu EDC knife.
Born in Japan, using technology, innovation, and precision, Sunline produces the widest selection of fishing lines at the most technologically advanced line factory in the world. Manufactured at the strictest tolerances to produce victories at the highest levels of tournament bass fishing. From household names like Christie, Swindle, and Cruz, to young guns like Cook, Logan, New, and Welcher, they all trust Sunline to take them to the top of the leaderboard. Choose the line that will give you the strength to guarantee your confidence. Sunline.
The great thing about the new Sensation soft plastics from Big Bite Baits, heavily scented, super soft, buoyant, comes in 7 great new shapes. I've got a couple of them of my signature series, the cliffhanger worm and the ramtail craw, great for a flipping jig, football jig, swim jig, all that. Several other great shapes. Really excited about it. We've worked over the last year, catches fish all over the country, and I think it's going to catch fish for people everywhere you try it.
The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
All right, wrapping things up here, BTL, on a Tuesday. I think we got everything figured out. Like I said, it's bitterly cold. I was just scrolling on Instagram there and saw my buddy Austin's at a boat ramp. Lake's frozen over. Also, no, I'm probably really fuzzy right now because I still don't have the internet completely figured out. But we have audio figured out, so you already know what I look like. So no big deal on that. Tomorrow, special time for BTL, noon Central Time. Matt Steffen will be on to talk about, he went to like some Berkeley symposium deal, but the one thing that I noticed, and especially with what he does with Core Tackle, and he's sponsored by Berkeley, is everything is forward-facing sonar. So we're talking about the tackle industries and how there are some baits that are down that are not selling. Well, we're seeing these companies now evolve to make baits that are targeted to the anglers who are fishing with forward-facing sonar. So we're seeing the evolution of baits right in front of our face, just like we did when the chatterbait came out, just like we did when the Alabama rig came out. It's the evolution. So we'll talk to Matt about that. Also, he is on the verge of heading to his first Bass Pro Tour event as a rookie. So we'll talk to Matt about that. All right. I think that's all we got for today. Like I said, tomorrow, Matt Steffen, but at noon, big shout out to Brian from Basstrix. Check them out. They're doing good stuff over there. All right, that's all we got. We'll talk to everyone tomorrow. See ya.